Another tiny problem I see here is this instantiation of post validator. I can argue that this validator can be a private field in the class, which means it needs to be initialized in the constructor. Let me extract this into a private field, and then you will see why there is a benefit of initializing this in a constructor as opposed to this method here. So I put the cursor on the variable name, Ctrl+Shift+R, introduce field. I'm going to call that field validator. Good. Now I'm going to move this initialization inside the constructor. Now, what is the benefit? The benefit is that we can potentially extract an interface from either of these classes and inject them into the constructor here, which improves the testability of this class. Now, we're not going to go to that extreme for this lecture, but if you're more experienced and you want to experiment with unit testing, that's the way to go. Now, ReSharper is suggesting to make this read-only because this field is initialized only once here and it should not be changed. So we put the cursor here, Alt and Enter, make it read-only. All right, back to where we were. Let's get rid of this extra white space. Look at this method. It's telling me a story. Get post, validate it. If it's valid, save it. Otherwise, display errors. I'm not lost in details of implementation. I'm not lost in if, else, for each, if, else, switch statements. The intent is pretty clear. Okay, the last thing I would like to change here is the name of this entity. Let's change it to post. That's better. Try to reduce all these mental disconnects. All right, so let's move on. Let's take a look at getPost method. Now, do we need this comment here? No, the intention is pretty clear. So let's get rid of it. And here we are initializing a new post and then we return it. The first thing I don't like here is that post repeated twice. So let's just use var here. Put the cursor here. Alt and Enter, Enter. Now we rename this entity to post. Now look, there is something redundant in this code. The name of the method is getPost. We create a new post object and then return post. Well, we could just inline this variable here. So I'll put the cursor here. Ctrl+Shift+R, inline variable. We don't need a local variable here. It's obvious that we are getting a post. The name of the method is explaining that. So again, try to reduce as much noise as you can in your code. All right, display errors. So the signature of this method is good. When I see display errors, I expect to see the list of errors to display. And I don't expect a return type other than void. So the signature of the method is good. Now let's see what's happening here. We get a control called error summary, which is of type bulleted list. And then we iterate over a list of errors. We try to find another control by that name, which is a label. If it does not exist, we add a new item to that bulleted list. Otherwise, we set the text for that label. Okay, the first thing I would like to change here is this bulleted list repeated twice. So put the cursor here, Alt and Enter, Enter. Use var. I don't like the word summary. Summary of what? I would like to be a little bit more descriptive, unless it's absolutely obvious. So in this particular case, I would like to change this to error summary. Now, do we need this comment? It's obvious that we're displaying errors to the user, and the name of the method is suggesting that. So let's get rid of it. Now, another thing I don't like here is this variable name, failure. We're talking about errors here, and then we talk about failure. Yeah, I know in the English language, they might be the same thing, maybe not. But again, there is a disconnect here. Use the same word, stick to the same convention. Put yourself in the shoes of the reader of this code. Please reduce the guesswork. So I'm going to change these to, see, even ReSharper is suggesting error. So failure is not a good name here. Now, again here, label, repeat it twice. We should use var. So Alt and enter, enter. Now look at this variable name, error message. What is it? It's a control, and it's actually a label. So I think a better name for this variable is error label as opposed to error message. So let's rename it error label. So if error label does not exist, we add a new list item based on that error message to the error summary. A little bit confusing, but that's okay. I think we can live with that. Let's get rid of all these annoying curly braces. The method is getting a bit shorter, but there is still one problem here. The problem is these two lines here. What is wrong about them? Well, this method, display errors, its job is to display errors. How those controls should be found, what they're called, is not the responsibility of this method. This method is purely responsible for that orchestration, for that coordination. Let me give you another example. Let's go back to our page load. Remember what this method looked like? And then I talked about the concept of coordination. So we got rid of all these details, and now this method is just coordinating some job. The same principle applies when we display errors. So our job here should be to iterate over a list of errors. If there is such a label, if it doesn't exist, add it, otherwise set its text. How to find those controls, what they're called, I don't think it's the responsibility of this method. So what I'm going to do is select this bit here, extract a separate method. I'm going to call that get error summary control. And same here. So select extract method, get error label. Now look at the variable name. Error label equals get error label. Well, it's obvious we're getting error label, so we can just make this shorter. Just label. Even ReSharper knows label is a better name. Less noise in the code. And now back here, error summary. It's obvious we're getting error summary control, so we can just call this summary. So see, the answer does not always come straight away. You may play around with a few different ideas and then get to a stage that you think, okay, the code is clean now, the intention is revealed, and there is minimal guesswork. So I'm fairly happy with this method. We have these two new methods here, pretty simple. Now, last thing I would like to change here is the order of these members. We've got these properties here, which are public. These are supposed to be, sorry, that's a mistake. That should be a text box. Actually, I made up this code, but it doesn't matter. So that should be a text box. And all of these properties along with private fields should be on top of the class. So the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of these white spaces. Select these together. I'm going to move it up, Shift, Control, Alt, up. We keep going up. One more. And put them close together. Now I think they should be private. I don't exactly remember WebForms technology, but I think the text boxes on the form are private. So if I'm wrong about that, please accept my apology. But for now, let's just imagine they should be private. So how I change that is look at this icon here. So ReSharper knows I want to do something. So Alt and Enter and to private. As simple as that. So see, on the top, we've got all of our fields and properties. It doesn't matter if they're private or public, they're all in one place. Then we have the constructor. Then we have the page load. See the order of members? This is the first thing that happens when the page is loaded. So I want this to be on the top. Now it's telling me a story. If pages post back, try save post. Otherwise, display post. What do you think should be the next method after page load? It should be try save post. because it's telling me a story and I want to know what is inside that story. So display post should come after. So I'm going to go to this try save post, Control B. Let's select it, move it up. Look at the order. So try save post, and if I'm interested, I can quickly find that here. I don't have to scroll up and down to find a method. Now this method is telling me another story. Get post, validated, blah, blah, blah. So the next thing I would like to see here is get post. Let's go. Select the method, move it up. Okay. Now, if all that happens, otherwise we get here, the next thing I want to see is display errors. So let's select the method, move it up. There you go. So see, the code is like a newspaper. You're reading from top to bottom, like a story. Okay, inside display errors, the first thing I see is get error summary control. If I'm interested in details of that, then it should be pretty close to my eyes. So let's go here, select the method, move it up. Right. Now we come here and here's another bit. So I want this to be in front of my eyes. Select this, move it up. One more. Okay, so display errors, get error summary control, which is right here, get error label, which is right here, and we've got this get post, which is actually used by this method here, display post. So it should come after display post. Select it, move it down, there you go. Now let's go to the top. In this case, ReSharper is suggesting to change the namespace here because it's not really project.usercontrols. We are in a folder called full refactoring. Now this is made up, but in a real world application, you will have proper folders. So at least I would like to change the namespace to match the folder structure of my project. So while the cursor is here, Alt and Enter. And the first item is move to cleancode.fullrefactoring namespace. So change it for me. Now take a look at this class. Look at the methods. You have really small methods and each do one job. Each method is only 5 lines or less. See, we started from a really fat class with ugly logic all tied together into a set of small methods that are more meaningful and more maintainable. Now, before we finish this, I want to ask you a question. Look at this method here, try save post. Do you think this method is doing one thing or a few things? When I first started with this concept of single responsibility principle and that each method should do only one thing, I wasn't sure if this method is doing one thing or a few things. I thought, well, it's getting a post, it's checking if it's valid, then it's saving it, and it's displaying errors. No, this method is not doing a few things, it's doing only one thing. And that is try saving post. Then what happens to that argument? Well, look, when we talk about getting a post or validating it or saving it or displaying errors, the detail is not here. The detail is in other methods. The detail of displaying errors is in a different method. Same goes for saving a post and validating a post and getting a post. So this method is delegating the actual work to other methods, and it's doing one thing, and that is coordination, which you see expressed here. Same goes for page load. Is this method doing two things? No, it's doing one thing because the actual detail is somewhere else. And all that method is doing is coordination of what should happen when page is loaded. Okay, now let's take a quick look at our repository and see if everything is clean before we finish this lecture. Wow, 2 problems here immediately got my attention. the namespace. Let's clean it. Good. The name of private field is not following standard naming convention. So Alt and Enter. There you go. And ReSharper wants us to change it to read only. Let's go ahead. And here we need to use var and change this entity to post. So Alt and Enter and change this to post. Now look, this local variable is redundant. It's obvious we're getting a post and we're returning a post. So it's just getting in the way. It's noise. Let's get rid of it. Control-Shift-R, inline variable. One line method. Beautiful. And the last thing here. Entity is not a good name. Entity is so generic. We're talking about saving a post, so the parameter should be post. Let's save everything. So, to recap, we extracted a lot of logic, we renamed variables, and now what we have is classes that are highly cohesive. This class, post repository, does only one thing, and is data access for posts. Its methods are highly related, getting a post and saving a post. We don't have validation logic here. That's why this class has high cohesion. Let's take a look at our post control class, the initial user control that we started. All this class is doing is displaying posts or capturing a post and then delegating the act of saving it somewhere else. The detail of data access is not here. It's in the post repository. The detail of validation is not here. So that brings us to the end of this lecture. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you'd like to see more full refactoring, you're welcome to send me your source code. And if it's a good candidate for showing in the video, I'm more than happy to spend time, look at your source code and finding some problems, and then I will record it as a new lecture and add it to this course, which would benefit not only yourself, but all the students for this course. So that's it for now, and thank you for watching.